So welcome to Festival dei Popoli for this very special interview with Chloé, the director of FORENSICKNESS, and she's going to talk to us about the film from Paris in a full lockdown. And this is a very unique opportunity that we have at the moment to hear from her. So I'm very happy that she accepted our interview, and I would like to ask her something about the film. The film is very special. It's really a film we all loved so much here at Festival dei Popoli for its very original style, and it's very clever and thought-provoking structure. It's obviously inspired by another film, Chris Kennedy's film, Watching the Detectives, and it becomes a sort of detective comedy with a hermeneutic turn, with a philosophical turn. How did you come to the style of the film, which is so complex and mixing references from philosophy and pop culture? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes. Well, first, I want to thank you for inviting the film and having me for this interview. I think the form of the film was really informed by the context in which the film was produced, because I made this film in the context of research, doctoral research. So I'm currently working on a PhD, and the film is actually part of my academic research, even if I guess the film is accomplishing different things than traditional scholarship would. But so the overall context for making this film is that I am doing research on films that are made out of online footage and that document different online communities. And I'm interested in thinking about this contemporary filmmaking practice, not just mine, but of other filmmakers, in the light of the history of ethnographic cinema, so trying to understand the politics and the ethics of filmmakers representing communities that they don't belong to. And so I'm working on a number of films, and in this corpus, some of them just have interested me so much that I felt like I wanted to respond to those films in an audiovisual way, not just by writing about them. So this is actually the second film that I'm making sort of in that context. The first one was a response to a film by the US filmmaker called Penny Lane, who made this film, The Pain of Others, to which I answered by a film called Watching the Pain of Others, which was very much reflecting upon my intellectual and emotional and physical response just to watching her film. And for FORENSICKNESS, as you said, it was thought of as sort of an analysis and a response, and I guess sort of a remake of Chris Kennedy's film. And so I think the form of the film, which I like to call a research diary, even if it's also partly fictional, and I guess that was also something that I was interested in specifically for FORENSICKNESS as opposed to the previous one, that I really wanted to tell the story, a research story. So you'd have a character, which is a researcher who has my voice in the film, but her research process sort of goes its own way. It's not necessarily exactly following my real research process, but I was really intrigued to, as you say, I don't know if it was my goal to make a detective comedy, but I certainly was interested in seeing this researcher character sort of become contaminated by the mode of thinking that she's trying to understand. So the character is investigating this the Reddit thread that was animated, or that was created after the bombings at the Boston Marathon in 2013. And there is this fascination in Chris Kennedy's film, which documents this Reddit thread already, for the way that the Redditors analyze images, right? Because they look at photographs that were taken at the moment of the attacks to try to find the terrorists in the crowd. And it seemed to me like Chris Kennedy's had this like really strong interest for the way that Redditors make sense of images. And because my old film was about making sense of Chris Kennedy's film, then it sort of became this, I guess, meta analysis or meta, again, like, yeah, detective process. And I was interested in trying to blur the lines or reveal that the lines are really not so clear between what is considered a legitimate process of understanding images and a non-legitimate process, which would be the one of the Redditors that has been so harshly criticized for all of the prejudices that went into this process. So I guess I was trying to sort of make sense of these different layers, and that led to the construction of the film, which, yeah, I guess is multi-layered for that reason, perhaps to the extent of just a bit too much, but I had a lot of threads that I wanted to, tie together.
It's so interesting that the title of your previous film is Watching the Pain of Others, and it seems like a quote from Susan Sontag's, and it almost seems like you're becoming the Susan Sontag of digital storytelling, and somehow drawing our attention to the process and to ourselves, looking at ourselves while we look. And I think this is very much ingrained in the process of digital storytelling, that while we are called into a more active participation, we may also be losing touch with, paradoxically, with the consequences of our free agency. So I wonder if you actually had the intention of engaging with the concept of agency somehow in an active way, and if you wanted to question the regimes of visibility that are somehow called into question by the digital turn and by new media.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess I've been interested for a number of years. I've been interested in the question of spectatorship, so trying to understand what's at stake in the act of viewing images and how we act upon images as we appropriate them and make sense of them and remember them, but also how images act upon us, how they inform our views of the world, our physical health, and every aspect of our lives. And I guess because I come from, I'm trained as a researcher in film studies, so I come from thinking about cinema as my main, object of study. And as in recent years, I've become more interested in thinking more about contemporary media and not just older films. So trying to work at the intersection between, which is also present in Forensickness, I guess, because I'm bringing back some older images in order to make sense of newer ones. But I guess as my interest has sort of been shifting towards more digital environments, I guess it's slowly appearing to me that the notion of spectatorship is only partially relevant to understanding our relationship to contemporary images, in the sense that there is much has been written about the fact that cinema spectatorship is not entirely a passive relationship, but still, you do not literally interact with images, and you're not sort of, constantly intertwined with the images that you consume and the images that you produce in the same way that we are now with contemporary online images, especially now that it seems like, because we're all in lockdown, every aspect of our lives is so intensely mediated by online images. So I guess this is where I would sort of see this notion of agency that you mentioned sort of appear in the conversation as a way to understand newer forms or more interactive or more, relations between human beings and images, which I guess is also harder to understand because it's just getting more, how should I say, more of a block, like more of a unit. Feels like we're becoming more of a unit with the images that we produce and the images that we watch or interact with. But it's also an interesting, I think it can also be related to the form of the film, because the film is mostly staged on the screen of my computer. So in that sense, it's a desktop documentary, to use a term that we've been using over the last years. And the thing that's really interesting to me, especially in the context of digital screenings, so viewers will have to see my film on their computers, except for those who have a projector at home, but most people will be watching it on the computer. I've heard this from viewers, that to watch a desktop film on your laptop makes it feel like your computer is being possessed, or like sort of, the entire interface is shifted to another one, and you do not have control over the mouse and the links, and you can't click because it's still a film. It's still, you know, an authoritarian flow of images. You can interact with it, which I guess is also an interesting way, or at least I'm interested in thinking also how that relates to the notion of agency, right? Because I'm dispossessing the viewers from the possibility to interact with the media that I'm presenting them with. So it's sort of, I guess, also an invitation to reflect upon the agency that we have the rest of the time when we interact with those interfaces.
And not only that, but there is also a level of performativity in your film, which is also very interesting, which is related to what you're talking about, because it's almost like an avant-garde AV essay, which you know, is seen by a viewer who obviously questions himself or herself while watching it in this environment where, as you're saying, the screens seem to be taking all the space, but then there is an almost acting by itself for this strange, you know, transparency that happens between the screen of our computer and the film. But then there is the voice, and the voice is really something I wanted to ask you. How did you construct the tone of the voice and the performativity you know, intrinsically inhabiting this voice that is so perfect and so incredibly ironic, but also piercing? So how did you think about it?
Yeah, I'm really happy you like it, because it was so hard. I think it was one of the hardest thing for, like, in the process of making this film, because I've been recording my voice for some time for other films. So, but I'm not an actress. I wasn't trained, you know, in vocal acting. And the thing is, for that specific film, because I wanted to stage the story of a researcher who sort of loses her mind as she, you know, advances in her research. Originally, I was really intrigued to also have the voice act upon that process. So to have it go from a more quiet to a less quiet, you know, tone, or just to sort of perform that confusion, I guess, a state of confusion and fascination and obsession which was the story I was trying to tell. And I think if I had been more of an actress, or if I had been working with an actress, then perhaps I would have, you know, written the narration in such a way that it would be less explicit about what's going on, so that you could have this information being conveyed by the voice. But I was never satisfied with my attempts at making my voice sound confused and obsessed and fascinated. So I opted for a more, I guess, explicit narration and keep the voice sort of stable, I guess, across the film. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I own the results. I think it works in the sense that I think, or the reason why I decided to keep it that way is because I thought there was actually an interesting tension between the fact that the voice is keeping its level of steadiness, and it sounds like you can still trust me because I'm so quiet and I feel, and, you know, I sound like I know what I'm saying. And so it's actually more like the content of the words that goes off tracks, that leaves the path of reason, so to speak, while the tone of the voice is maintaining itself on that level of, you know, I sound like a guide whom you can follow, and I'm going to make sense of everything. So that's sort of the tension that I try to construct. But I think, yeah, it would have been very different if I had been working with an actress for this one.
Well, the seamless plainness of the voice actually creates a tension that is ironic, because the voice is so to be trusted, but then the discoveries that the voices makes are, you know, are creating a series of questions that are very unsettling for the viewers. So I feel that's where the performativity lies, and that's where the interest actually is. Well, this is such a rich conversation, and I would love to continue forever, and I hope I will meet you in person in Paris. And I would like to conclude by asking you, so how is your PhD going? How is there a new project in the pipeline, or are the results of the of the viewings of Forensickness going to be included in the thesis as well? Are you reflecting on your own work in the thesis?
Yes, I am. So part of the thesis is analyzing films that were made by other artists, so traditional scholarship in that sense, which I'm in the process of writing. And then there's also a part of the thesis that reflects on my own practice. So I guess the whole thesis is really written from the perspective of a practitioner. And I'm trying to understand the choices that other artists make in terms of how they position themselves with these questions of the ethics of representation when you make such ethnographic films. So ethnographic films, documenting the internet. And then I'm also trying to unpack my own creative decisions as I made Watching the Pain of Others and Forensickness that constitute the only two films that are part of that project. So it's in process. Hopefully will be finished in the next months. And then I'm also, parallel to that project, I'm also working on a feature that's currently in writing, which is in the context of an actually long project in collaboration with a US artist called Kevin B. Lee, who's also been working extensively in the field of desktop documentary. And we've been working, it's also a research and art project that circles around the online propaganda of the terrorist group Islamic State. And so we've made several short films, and now we're working on an original feature that hopefully we'll be able to make next year, release the following year. That's the plan.
Well, good luck with that in the current environment, a very courageous choice. And I wish you all the best, and all the best to the viewers who are going to watch this film. Thank you so much for such a bright film, and I hope to meet you very soon in person.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention.
Bye.